Chapter 141. Searching. We did it. We found him, Banner shouted. The latest version of the scanner had picked up the gamma traces Leader left when he escaped. Although some time had passed and gamma residue usually faded, the fact that Leader had used underground pipes meant the energy had dissipated far more slowly. Even after a day, it was still detectable. Worse, Banner had noticed something else. There wasn't just one source of gamma energy in the tunnels. Leader might be accompanied by mutated creatures, and Banner hoped he hadn't split them up to throw off their tracking. Banner's worry proved justified. When they followed the residue to the point where Leader had exited the underground passage, the red lines on the scanner that marked gamma energy began branching out. "Lee, look at this," Banner said, showing Noah the display. "No surprise," Noah said, rubbing his chin. Leader wasn't stupid. His oversized intellect made that obvious. The detection method they were using was one Noah had used before, so Leader would expect it and take precautions. But he wouldn't expect we have this. Noah lifted his wrist and showed the rune-like spell etched there. The tracking enchantment was the key. "Magic, huh? Amazing. Let's give Dr. Stern a surprise," Banner grinned. The villain would never have guessed that magic existed in their world. After confirming the exact exit, Noah decided to go at once, then let the magic compass guide him to Leader and finish the mission. He checked his gear, stepped into the Source Project armor, and prepared to teleport. "Banner, you coming?" Noah asked, while Lysandra overlaid the gamma detector readings onto his faceplate so he could lock the teleport destination. "I'll sit this one out," Banner said after a moment's thought. "I can't fly, and trying to follow you would only slow you down. But when you find him, bring me there. I want to ask Samuel Stern why he did this." "All right." Noah nodded, opened a teleportation gate, and the armor rose and flew into it. Banner watched Noah go through, then pulled out the phone Noah had given him and called his girlfriend Betty. He hadn't spoken to her much in the last 2 days. She must be worried. Buzz. A blue ring of light unfolded in a dark, damp space, hovering a meter above the ground, and a black-suited figure drifted out. Noah shut the gate behind him and took in the scene. His own vision pierced the gloom, and his faceplate painted a clear picture of the surroundings. A long-abandoned sewer channel, still emitting a foul stench. Thankfully, his armor filtered out smells. Otherwise, it would have been unbearable. Noah turned toward a pipe opening. That had to be where Leader had come up. "Gamma energy detection online," Lysandra announced in his ear. After Banner's modifications, Lysandra had integrated the gamma detector into Noah's suit. She'd been incredibly fast and efficient. The base technology existed, she'd only needed to tune it. "Thanks, Lysandra," Noah said. Lysandra's soft laugh came through the earpiece. On Noah's faceplate, a red trace mapped out Leader's escape route. All he had to do was follow it. He rose out of the ditch and scanned the area. It looked deserted until his scan flagged something odd. "There's a corpse here." A red marker hovered over a human-shaped form on the ground. The body looked like an ordinary civilian in plain clothes. A fallen phone lay beside him. Noah picked it up and unlocked it to see the last messages. "Target found. Target has appeared, preparing to report to headquarters." Noah frowned. These weren't normal last texts. "Lysandra, identify him," he said. "Target data acquired," Lysandra replied, and the man's information appeared in his HUD. "Airy, S-Healed, Agent," Noah read. "S-Healed?" Noah muttered. "When did they get involved?" He hesitated. Whoever had killed this agent might change the stakes, but he decided it could wait. "Find Leader first. We'll deal with Sealed or Hydra later," he told himself, and pushed off along the red trail. Partway along the route, Noah encountered a couple of false leads Leader had laid to confuse pursuers. A quick tap to the rune on his wrist brought the magic compass online. It pointed directly at the true trail, cutting through the deception. Wind whipped past as Noah streaked over the treetops. The suit's faceplate marked every life sign he scanned. Ahead, he found them. Leader, several armed human escorts clustered around him, and the mutated creatures crouched in the shadows like hunting dogs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the things around them, Noah said, counting silently. He edged closer until he had a full layout. "Okay, now I can call Banner in." Noah opened a teleportation gate. Chapter 142, The End of the Leader. "Lie? Did you find Samuel Stearns?" Dr. Banner stepped out of the teleportation gate, still a little dazed, a phone clutched in his hand as if he'd just been talking to someone important. Yes, he's right ahead. Noah was already standing on the slope, scanning the valley below. In the distance, a scatter of dark shapes marked the leader and his men. Bruce couldn't make them out, only a dark smudge, but Noah could. After bringing Banner up to the ridge, Noah tapped a small device onto Bruce's wrist. "What's this?" Bruce asked, feeling the cold metal as it fastened itself like a bracelet. "An energy shield device," Noah said. "If you don't want to transform, stay back and watch. This will keep you safe." He gathered himself, preparing to lift Bruce with his magic and fly toward the leader. "Thanks," Bruce began, but before he finished, he felt himself rise into the air. The ground fell away beneath them, but there was no wind or pressure, no sensation of speed at all. In seconds, they were before the leader and several operatives. The men who had been converging on the flat area to meet their contacts froze at the sudden arrival. A ripple of air announced the swift-winged swordsman. A man floated beside him. The leader's face went hard. The worst thing he'd feared had happened. The swift-winged swordsman had found him. The armed operatives leveled their rifles and barked a warning. "Stop! Don't come any closer. We're the FBI on an important mission. Leave at once." Their claim sounded desperate and rehearsed. Noah didn't care about the badge they shouted. He also had an FBI ID from Coulson, and he knew how operatives and agencies like to hide behind names. Whether these men were S-Shield, Hydra, or something worse didn't matter. Noah didn't halt. Bruce watched Noah's back and followed. The bracelet's faint hum gave him a sliver of calm. The men exchanged nervous glances. One of them decided to fire a warning shot. As he pulled the trigger, the gun in his hand was yanked by an invisible force, wrenched from his fingers, and hurled into a boulder. The other rifles were treated the same way, shattered into pieces under an unseen pressure. Noah only extended a finger. An enormous force slammed the men to the ground, pressing them face first into the dirt. They struggled and twisted, breathing in dust, but they could not move. Samuel Stern's face was grim as Noah and Bruce closed to within 10 meters. "Dr. Stern, why are you doing this?" Bruce demanded. "You know how dangerous and unstable the Hulk's power is." For a moment, before Noah stepped in, Samuel Stearns had still been someone who helped Bruce. Bruce could not have believed that Stearns would use the Hulk's blood to carry out such experiments. Those pits full of corpses were burned into his memory. From that day, he had decided to find Stearns and stop him. "Bruce, you are small-minded and cowardly," the leader sneered, raising his voice. "You possess power, but refuse to use it. You run. The Hulk's power holds innumerable possibilities. We can develop cures, eliminate disease, purify humanity, strengthen everyone. You've only been murdering innocents and creating those abominations," Bruce interrupted, fury overtaking him. "Don't dress your ambitions up as salvation. Heh! Necessary sacrifices. They would understand." Noah stepped forward, raising a hand to stop Bruce. "Enough, Bruce. Don't waste words. He's buying time." As he spoke, Noah felt the leader's mind reach out, muted mental energy pulsing like a beacon. The mutated creatures hidden in the trees began to stir, out answering whatever command Stearns sent. From the shadows came the hideous things, clawed, gnashing, green drool dripping from their mouths. Bruce turned toward the sound, startled. Noah's figure blurred for a heartbeat. When he reappeared, he held a white longsword, the magic cut, and he wiped it clean. At the same instant, the creatures froze mid-lunge, expressions locked as though time itself had hiccuped. Then fissures began to spider across their skins. The same slashing force that detached the creatures' forms sped outward into the foliage and boulders, an invisible hurricane of sword energy carving grooves into the ground and shredding everything in its path. The leader took an involuntary step back, horror across his face. Bruce watched in stunned silence. He knew the Hulk's strength, but this was on another level. "No, wait, I still have." Stearns tried to stammer, panic replacing his arrogance. He reached for something as the aura surged. The sword energy swallowed him. When it cleared, there was nothing where Samuel Stearns had stood. The pinned men around him lay panting, faces smeared with dirt. They had seen only the commotion and felt the shockwave. They didn't know exactly what had happened. All they hoped was that Noah would not turn his attention to them next. Bruce stared at the empty space, disbelieving. "Lee, how could you?" he asked. He had not expected Noah to kill a former colleague outright. Noah slid magic cut back into his backpack. This man has committed countless crimes. If we let him go now, it'll be impossible to catch him again. Think of all the people he's harmed. You don't want more innocents hurt in the future, do you? Bruce swallowed. In his heart, the images of Stern's experiments and the dead convinced him. You're right, he said finally. We can't let him continue. A system notification popped up in Noah's panel. Mission accomplished. He allowed himself a brief satisfaction. The long pending mission was finally over. Okay, Noah said, looking down at the men sprawled in the dirt. Now it's your turn. You're next. After taking care of Leader with almost no effort, Noah didn't hurry to collect his reward. He stood over the fallen S-Shield agents and scanned them. Lysandra fed him the identification data she'd pulled. The 4 people on the ground were indeed S-Shield personnel. 3 level 4 agents and 1 level 5. S-Shield used a 10-level system to grade agents from level 1 to level 10. The number measured an agent's overall capability and importance, not rank. Black Widow and Hawkeye were level 7, Coulson was level 8, and at present, Nick Fury was the only level 10. The men sprawled at Noah's feet were low-level operators. In S-Shield, only agents level 7 and above could access the most sensitive files. The man who had posed as a passerby earlier had been a level 3, the weakest of the lot. Noah shrugged. He didn't much care about S-Shield's reputation. Leader had been his mission target, and he didn't trust what S-Shield might do with Leader's technology if they got their hands on it. No better than the trouble they'd stirred up with their Tesseract research. Still, it was possible these people weren't bona fide S-Shield agents at all. They could be Hydra snakes in sealed uniforms. Noah snapped his fingers. The agents, who had been feebly struggling beneath him, went limp, their eyes rolled back, and they collapsed into unconsciousness. Satisfied, he activated a holographic display and dialed Nick Fury's number. Technically, he was hacking into Fury's phone more than dialing it. Fury's face filled the projection, the same dark, lined face Noah had seen before, somehow looking even grimmer now. Noah, what now? And can you try calling me like a normal person for once? He barked. Noah grinned. Good evening, Director Fury. He swiveled the holo to show the unconscious men. Are these yours? Fury frowned at the image, black combat suits, helmets off, faces turned to the ground so he couldn't see them. Who are they? He asked, suspicious. Coulson, check these. Only then did Noah notice Coulson's presence beside Fury. They'd been silent until Noah intruded on whatever they'd been doing. Hello, Coulson, Noah said. Evening, Noah. Coulson began cross-referencing the photos against S-Shield personnel files. Fury kept his eyes on the projection. So, why are you calling me? He asked after delegating the ID work. Noah leaned back, letting Bruce Banner step into the frame behind him. Director, you're aware of what happened in the city of XX, Mexico, right? Fury's expression tightened. S-Shield had already dispatched people to that incident. They knew it was connected to the Hulk. Is this about that? He asked. No, Noah said. Not so much me. It's related to Dr. Banner. Fury's attention sharpened. He knew about Banner and the escaped Hulk. He'd even had conversations with Tony and Noah about how best to handle the situation. He hadn't expected to find Banner so quickly. Banner himself looked awkward, clearly unfamiliar with Fury or S-Shield. Hello, he offered faintly. Noah spoke a name out of nowhere. Samuel Stearns. Fury blinked. Coulson answered before Fury could. Samuel Stearns was a friend of Bruce Banner. During the Abomination incident, he helped clear some gamma contamination from Banner. After Abomination showed up, Stearns went missing. We searched the campus and the surrounding area and found nothing. Coulson pulled a file from a nearby cabinet and showed Fury. Director, I pulled these men's records. They are listed in our system as agents, but none of them were assigned to any operations today. Fury stared at the photos again, then looked at Coulson, then back at Noah. The implications settled into the room like a cold draft. They came looking for Samuel Stearns, Fury said quietly. They weren't sent by us. Noah let the words hang. He had already checked S-Shield's data, and between that and Lysandra's analysis, he was certain these men weren't legitimate S-Shield operatives. If they'd shown up with no clearance and no orders, they were almost certainly Hydra infiltrators wearing S-Shield credentials. For a beat, there was only the hum of the tech in Noah's hand and the distant traffic outside. Fury and Coulson exchanged a long look, their faces grave. Fury's jaw tightened. He'd been hunting for the truth behind the leaks and the infiltrations for a long time. If agents in S.H.I.E.L.D., sewn uniforms, were roaming around with no orders and searching for Stearns, then the rot ran deeper than either of them had hoped. Noah pocketed the hollow. "I thought you should know," he said simply. Fury nodded once, colder than before. "Good work," he said, and the projection cut out, leaving a silence that felt heavier than any conversation. Chapter 144, Handover. "Noah, do you know who these people are?" Nick Fury asked, hoping for useful information. Noah could see snippets of future messages. The answer was obvious to him, but he didn't want to blurt it out. "I don't know. Do you want me to help interrogate them?" Noah asked, letting Fury discover it for himself. If he'd said they were Hydra or that S.H.I.E.L.D. was half compromised, Fury would have rejected it as too fantastic. "No. If possible, hand them over to me." Fury waved him off. He planned to interrogate them personally. S.H.I.E.L.D. had methods, and he believed they could make even the tightest mouths talk. "All right. Do you want me to teleport them over?" Noah indicated the unconscious agents on the ground. "No need. If you can, take them to a secure off-site location. I don't want to interrogate these colleagues inside the base." Fury paused, then decided to be cautious. He wanted these internal spies taken to a secret facility known only to his most trusted people. Interrogating them on base would alert others, and Fury didn't believe these were the only moles. "All right, head there as soon as you can. I'll be there shortly." Noah checked the location Fury sent, closed the projection, and ended the call. He gathered the unconscious Hydra operatives with a small motion of magic, dragging them together on the ground. At that moment, Banner stepped forward, still a little dazed. "So, it's over?" Banner asked. "Mostly," Noah said. "For you, the biggest problem is Samuel Stearns. General Ross is another matter. If not for the family connection, taking care of him would be straightforward. For now, we'll go slowly." Noah shrugged. He didn't fully understand Banner's entanglement with the Ross family, but he could create enough trouble later to get Ross to back off. The leader was dead, and as long as Banner kept a low profile, no one would trace him. Banner exhaled slowly, relief flooding his features. Life on the run might finally be ending. With Noah's help, he wouldn't have to worry about Ross's pursuit. Noah did not want the Hulk's strength so much as Banner's intellect. Banner could at last try to live normally. For him, it felt like suffering turning to joy. "Noah, take me back first," Banner said. "The people you're going to meet don't seem ordinary. I don't want to go." Banner had overheard enough of Noah's conversation to know S.H.I.E.L.D. was not to be treated lightly. Years of running from powerful organizations had made him wary. Noah nodded. "All right, get some rest for a few days. When you're ready, I'll arrange work for you. If you need to leave the island, you can use the boat or helicopter," Noah said. He hadn't forgotten why he'd recruited Banner, to speed his research and ease some of the pressure on him. The vehicles Noah mentioned were already on the island. He couldn't yet build a permanent teleportation gate for general use, so he'd prepared conventional transport instead. They were his own designs, using technology salvaged from Lyssandra's era, and he'd even upgraded the black car at his house. Banner accepted the offer. If he ever had to go see Betty, he'd need those options. Noah opened a short teleportation gate and sent Banner home. After Banner disappeared through it, Noah double-checked Fury's rendezvous coordinates and opened a gate to the desolate spot Fury had specified. He stepped into a lonely stretch of land. A few figures, still slack from unconsciousness, drifted out of the portal behind him. He let them drop to the ground. The Hydra operatives were tough. Being thrown wasn't going to injure them. Fury and his team didn't have anything like a teleportation gate, Noah thought as he glanced at his watch. They would take time to arrive. While he waited, he caught up on the news. During the period Noah had been occupied hunting the leader, the world hadn't erupted with any immediate crises. Iron Man continued to dominate headlines. Since Iron Man and the swift-winged swordsman appeared, masked vigilantes had become more numerous. Daredevil and others seemed to be making a comeback, and the criminal underworld had grown correspondingly bolder. Some things hidden in the shadows were beginning to surface. Not his concern for now, Noah thought. Give me more work. About 10 minutes later, he sensed aircraft approaching. A Quinjet glided down and touched the makeshift landing site. The hatch opened, and a man in a black trench coat, Nick Fury, stepped out, flanked by Agent Coulson. You here? Good, Fury said. These guys are yours. Noah waved and nudged the unconscious Hydra operatives toward Fury's feet. He was about to leave when Fury called, Wait, Noah. Noah paused. Fury glanced at the prisoners, then asked, Earlier you said they were tracking Samuel Stearns. Where is he now? Fury wanted to know why these operatives had been after Stearns and whether they could learn anything from them. That guy is dead, Noah said, spreading his hands. I killed him. Chapter 145, the upcoming 10 draws. Finally done. Noah came home, stripped off his armor, and collapsed onto the sofa. The last few days had been non-stop. His body felt fine, strong as ever, but there was a dull, inexplicable weariness in his mind. He needed a few days to relax. Might as well claim the mission rewards, he thought. After he'd taken out the leader, the mission had technically been finished, but Noah hadn't claimed the rewards until he got back. He opened the mission panel. The system's UI was always sparse, and glanced over the entries. 2 A-level tasks sat at the top, both ones he couldn't handle right now. A-level task, God Revitalize. A-level task, Void Overlord. One involved the Celestials, the other was a large-scale mission tied to the Void. Noah wasn't in any rush on the Celestials. Even if they showed up earlier than in the original timeline, he had a year to prepare. He wanted to take that one on only when he felt absolutely ready, ideally after he could take a Celestial on solo. The Void Overlord being listed as A-level seemed like a limitation of the system. In reality, it was far beyond A-level. Even a small branch of that mission would be at least B-level, and future submissions could be much worse. He probably couldn't complete it without summoning a major hero like the Star-Forging Dragon King. Noah skimmed the A-level details and then shifted to the B-level list. He hit Complete Mission on the leader task. The settlement screen popped up. Mission completed. Gained 1,000 essence. 1,000? About what I expected. The leader mission hadn't been especially difficult, just a pain to pin down since the leader kept moving. Once found, one solid hit was enough. 1,000 essence was a middling B-level reward. The biggest B-level payout he'd gotten so far had been from the Ivan Vanko whip mission. After mowing through robots and whip himself, he'd gotten 2,500 essence. Noah opened his system backpack to check his total. Current essence, 500. Only 200 short. 2 easy C-level tasks, and I can do another 10 draw. It was already past midnight, and new missions had refreshed, but he wasn't eager to rush them. He organized the items in his backpack. Heck, then shut it. On the table in front of him lay the ancient tomes he'd borrowed from the Kamar Taj library, books that had boosted his space magic. He stacked them neatly, planning to return them tomorrow and pick up a few beginner texts for Gwen while he was there. With small things tended to, Noah let his thoughts wander to the larger picture. He suddenly remembered the Hydra agents Nick Fury had taken in earlier. What would Fury do once he knew their identities? Nick Fury should be able to get something out of them, Noah mused. Were nine-headed serpent agents specially trained to resist interrogation? For someone like Nick Fury, grilling stubborn types was routine, and with S.Shield's tech, truth serums, torture protocols, Fury could have plenty of tools. But Noah thought of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and the Hydra agent Sitwell, bald, bespectacled, who folded after being tricked and threatened. Maybe not every Hydra operative had been brainwashed to shut up. He didn't know whether Fury would uncover Hydra's infiltration of S.Shield. If he did, would he disband the agency as in the movie? Noah suspected not. Fury seemed more inclined to reform S.Shield, and in the film, Cap and Black Widow refused that plan anyway. Noah didn't care much whether S.Shield survived. He had bigger concerns. He suspected his parents in this life had been killed because of Hydra. Earlier, he'd asked Coulson to investigate the 2 surviving team members from that mission. He wondered how that probe was going. I'll ask him tomorrow, Noah said aloud, rubbing his head. As for how to take on Hydra, he had an idea. Find Dr. Zola. The old Hydra scientist had transferred his consciousness into a computer after his death and was hiding in a secret facility. As an AI, Zola had been behind projects like the Insight Conspiracy. If Noah could locate Zola, he might extract a list of Hydra operatives and their connections. If Zola couldn't help, there was always Alexander Pierce, the man at the top who would surely know a lot. Ah, I'll think about it tomorrow, Noah decided, and let the thoughts fade as he closed his eyes. Night in the Himalayas turned the towering, snow-capped peaks into silver spires under the moon, the stars scattered across the sky like pearls on black velvet. Below, a small village glowed faint and warm. Light spilled from windows onto the snow, sketching a calm, peaceful scene. Far from the city's neon glare, the village was quietly ancient. Snowflakes drifted in the wind, and in one unremarkable corner of the settlement sat Kamar Taj. From the outside, it passed for an ordinary house, but beyond its door the place opened into another world. Blessed and bound by many powers, Kamar Taj's interior was vastly larger than its exterior suggested, a true sanctuary. At the center stood the Ancient One's sanctum. Though called a sanctuary, the building's exterior differed little from the others, only a little taller. Inside, the decor was austere and very old. The Ancient One sat across from Noah, leaning forward to pour him a cup of strong tea. Steam rose between them. "Thank you," Noah said, taking the cup with both hands and lifting it to his lips for a small sip. The tea's warmth cut through the mountain chill, though Noah by nature felt little of the cold. The Ancient One sat straight-backed on her wooden chair, a faint smile on her face. For a moment, Noah thought she looked like a kindly grandmother, an apt image, considering her age. Her robes were the same simple, loose garments she always wore. Kamar Taj's mystics were used to inner practices that allowed them to dress lightly, even in bitter weather. "Noah," he began, "my main reason for coming this time is to ask if you've learned anything new about the Celestials." He had returned the borrowed ancient tomes to the library earlier that morning, then come straight to the Ancient One. When he'd first arrived at Kamar Taj, he'd mentioned the Celestials. The Ancient One had some knowledge of them, but had not known they planned to use Earth as a womb for the birth of a god. The Time Stone, Noah had discovered, yielded little against the Celestials. Time could not reveal their designs. Many days had passed since, and Noah hoped the Ancient One might now have unearthed something useful. Beyond the Celestials themselves, he wanted the locations of the Eternal scattered across the globe. Of the Eternal, only a few had been easy to find, the two he had seen in New York earlier and the one who had appeared as a star in India. The rest had gone to deeper seclusion. The Ancient One inclined her head and slipped a sheet of paper from her sleeve. Noah took it. Black, confident script flowed across the page, a handwriting that matched the steady authority of the woman who had written it. "These are the current addresses of those outsiders, what you call the Eternal, on Earth," she said. "I helped you find them." Noah scanned the list and felt a rush of relief. With these leads, locating them would be far easier. The Ancient One continued, "I also spoke with their leader, Ajak. She is indeed opposed to the birth of the god, as you suspected." Noah raised an eyebrow. "You told her about me?" "I mentioned your existence," the Ancient One said simply. "Someone who could aid them against the Celestials' design. When you are ready to seek the Eternal, go to Ajak first. She will help." The suggestion of resistance was flattering and dangerous. Noah did not yet possess the strength to confront the Celestials, although he intended to grow into it. He wondered whether Ajak would accept the Ancient One's words. Ajak had lived for ages and understood the Celestials' might. Why would she believe someone on Earth could stand against them? Perhaps the Ancient One had shown her visions of the future. Noah could only guess. For now, he had no intention of contacting the Eternal immediately. He needed to settle other matters first. Hydra and the confusion surrounding the events of Avengers 1. With Loki captured and that plot altered, he couldn't be sure whether the original sequence of events would unfold, be delayed, or be erased altogether. He had, however, felt a strong disturbance from the Space Stone. The Avengers story might still play out, and Thanos could be stirring. He resolved to wait until after those events, at least until the Avengers situation had stabilized, before approaching Ajak and the others. Before Noah could ask more, the Ancient One added, "When I learned of the Celestials' movements, I consulted the Vishanti and asked for guidance. They advised caution, not to interfere too heavily. Noah frowned. Did the Vishanti refuse to help? The Ancient One finished her tea, calm as ever. The Vishanti possess immense wisdom. There is reason in their counsel, but I will not ignore the matter completely. When it becomes necessary, I will act. Her words left Noah more sure of one thing. Much of the burden would fall upon him. The Vishanti's caution and the Ancient One's reluctance to take direct action meant the fighting would likely be his to do once he had the power. That was a thought he had long been prepared for. "Thank you for the information, Ancient One," Noah said, folding the paper and tucking it away. He rose to depart. Before he left, he stopped at the library and borrowed a selection of ancient texts for Gwen, books he had carefully chosen and knew would delight her. He bowed once more to the Ancient One and stepped back out into the night air, the village of Kamartaj resting silently under the silver Himalaya sky, plans and paths slowly converging toward whatever the future would demand. After meeting with Noah and rounding up the S-Shield members suspected of being moles, Fury loaded the unconscious operatives onto a Quinjet and headed for one of his secret bases. Even a crafty rabbit has more than one burrow. Fury, an ace agent who'd spent decades in the field, kept a handful of safe houses. This was just one of them. Nearly an hour into the flight, the pilot set the Quinjet down in a cleared patch of land. Fury's bases were always in uninhabited mountain ranges or old forests. The landing area had been specially prepared for aircraft. When the jet touched down, the tail hatch lowered, forming a ramp. Fury was the first to stride out, trench coat flapping, hands clasped behind his back, his expression all business. Behind him came Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, in her tight black uniform, red hair tucked back. She'd flown the sortie and stayed in the cockpit while Fury met Noah. Now she stepped down the ramp and waited at the side. "The heavy lifting is for you, gentlemen," she said to the others in the cabin and moved aside. Inside, Coulson and Hawkeye were already hauling bodies out. The 4 agents had been sedated into a deep coma. Each was roughly the size of a normal man, and Coulson and Hawkeye handled them without much trouble. Fury had brought his 3 most trusted operatives on the mission, Coulson, Hawkeye, and Natasha, which showed how seriously he took it. This wasn't a routine arrest. It was about the security of S-Shield itself. They set the 4 down on the ground. Then Fury reappeared, flanked by several tall men in plain, specialized uniforms. After a quick nod to Natasha and the others, those men produced stretchers and carried the sedated agents toward a nearby building. Coulson studied them but didn't recognize any of the faces. These weren't S-Shield's usual personnel. Fury preferred to recruit and train his own people, orphans and drifters he'd pulled out of hard places, hardened and loyal. He trusted them completely. "Let's go," Fury said, and led Coulson, Hawkeye, and Natasha toward the hidden facility. They passed through a long corridor and stopped in front of the interrogation suite. The room was steel-fronted, the walls gleaming dark gray. No windows, only solid metal. A heavy door blocked the entrance. Fury stepped forward, entered a code on the keypad, and the steel door slid open. Inside, 4 chairs were bolted to the floor, each fitted with restraints that left only the head free to move. The room wasn't set up for observation through one-way glass. It was built to be sealed and secure. A man in a white lab coat stood beside the chairs, and next to him sat a rack of equipment, gadgets and instruments even Black Widow and Hawkeye didn't immediately recognize. "Begin," Fury ordered. The researcher picked up a syringe that held a sloshing green liquid and moved to the first chair. Fury had taken precautions when he first brought these agents in. To prevent any sudden recovery or tampering, he'd given each of them a sedative that would keep them comatose until the corresponding antidote was administered. Now the researcher injected the green fluid, the antidote, into the necks of the 4 one by one. When he finished, he looked at Fury for confirmation. Fury nodded, and the researcher stepped out of the room. Fury had planned to interrogate them alone, but Noah's warning hadn't left him at ease. He kept Coulson, Hawkeye, and Natasha in the room with him. The sedated men stirred. The antidote lifted the coma, but they awoke groggy, blinking against the harsh overhead lights. Dazed at first, they quickly came to as they registered who stood before them. A black silhouette, bald-headed with an eye patch, Director Nick Fury, and a small group of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s more famous names. The first to come fully to himself was the man who'd been acting as the group's leader. He scanned the room, tried to jerk free, and found the restraints immovable. "Director Fury," he said hurriedly, throat tight with adrenaline. "What is the meaning of this? I'm Jocelyn Judd, a level 5 S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. I was on assignment in XX City. I don't know why you've tied me up here, but there has to be some mistake. There must be some misunderstanding." The nine-headed serpent operative gasped as he blinked awake. Fury was already standing over him. Seeing the bald man like that did not bode well. The operative forced out an explanation while his eyes darted around, trying to gauge his surroundings and buy time, already planning how to survive whatever interrogation Fury might employ. "Misunderstanding? Heh." Fury's face didn't change as he gave a cold laugh. He walked to the researcher's table, which was littered with instruments. The sight of the devices made the men strapped to the chairs visibly tense. Fury pushed aside some intimidating tools and picked up a palm-sized white tablet that looked like a remote. He glanced at the captives and tapped the remote lightly. "I know you won't talk easily," he said, "but I have all the time in the world to wear you down." The men's eyes widened. Their bodies began to tremble. Their faces went an ugly shade. Then the room filled with screams. The chairs, rigged with restraints, delivered a powerful electric current when Fury pressed the button. It sent convulsions through their bodies and produced a stench that made Hawkeye take a step back. Within a minute, one of the men had been shocked into a neurological collapse and lost control of himself. Fury kept his expression impassive. A few seconds after the worst of the screams, he clicked the remote again and cut the current. He keyed the room's vents to clear the air. The captives slumped back in their chairs, exhausted and dazed. Fury had used the shock not to end them but to break their resolve, enough to lower their resistance, but not so much that anything they said would be entirely unreliable. "Tell me," Fury said, leaning on the table, the remote in his hand. "Why were you where you shouldn't have been tonight? Who gave the order? What was the objective? How many allies do you have inside a shield?" The men only panted. Their breathing was ragged. None answered. They had heard the questions and knew the stakes. Betrayal in Hydra had consequences, and so did betrayal in S.H.I.E.L.D. They didn't know which was worse, or what Fury might do next. "All right," Fury said. He pressed a button, and the bottom restraints of the chairs released, revealing retractable wheels. He ordered Coulson and two others to take the prisoners separately to different interrogation rooms for solitary questioning. Fury kept the man who'd been identified as a level 5 operative, the apparent leader. "I can make you talk," Fury told him, sweeping his hand toward the pile of instruments. Fear flashed across the man's face. Fury let him experience the techniques of an interrogator who didn't blink. Simultaneously, the other rooms were busy. Hawkeye and Black Widow handled their suspects with the ruthless efficiency of seasoned operatives, while Coulson, less practiced in these extremes, misapplied a device and nearly did serious damage before stopping. Hours passed. When the team regrouped in the conference room, every face was drawn and grim. "Director, are they telling the truth?" Coulson asked. The answers he'd gotten had been hard to accept. "Either they're telling the truth, or they rehearsed a convincing lie," Fury said softly, staring at the table. "Hydra is right under our noses, and they've infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. It reads like science fiction." Hawkeye leaned against the wall, arms folded, jaw tight. The confessions had been consistent across interrogations. At first, Fury and the others had suspected deception. Hydra operatives were trained liars, but the more extreme the methods they used, the more the story held. Even the level 5 operative, who seemed trained to resist, had broken under Fury's interrogation. These weren't starry-eyed fanatics ready to die for their cause. They were professionals who cracked when pushed. "We don't know how many are inside our ranks," Natasha said, folding one leg across the other and staring at the floor. Her calf kept twitching, a small sign of how badly the news had shaken her. "I can't believe we might have been working alongside Hydra agents this whole time." "We'll find out," Fury said. The idea that he had been leading an organization compromised by Hydra sat heavy on him, but for now, brute force and careful verification mattered more than outrage. "You all wait here for my orders. I'm taking these men. I'm going to use some special methods to confirm whether what they told us is true." Fury left the room. The captives flanked and loaded onto the Quinjet. Coulson and the others remained at the base, standing by for instructions. Fury strapped in, set the flight plan, and announced the destination: Soviet Russia. Chapter 149, Memory Retrieval. In the 1990s, Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, returned to Earth after a long, complicated series of events that had left her living on a Kree world for several years. When she came back, the memories the Kree had wiped began to come back as well. She wasn't the only visitor from across the cosmos. A coterie of Skrulls had followed her to Earth. In the ensuing clashes, Carol recovered the rest of her past. It was during this time that Nick Fury met her. At first, Carol fought the Skrulls. Later, she learned the truth. They were not villains, but a persecuted people, refugees searching for new homes and for missing family. Once Carol's powers fully awoke, she turned her fury on the Kree. Ronan led a Kree armada and launched devastating barrages toward Earth, but they were halted by Captain Marvel herself. Terrified by her power, Ronan and his ships retreated in disorder. The Skrull homeworld had been destroyed by the Kree. Homeless and scattered, the Skrulls relied on their natural ability to shapeshift to wander the galaxy. The small group that met Carol and the others was only a fraction of those refugees, led by Talos, who guided them in search of a safe place. When Fury learned what they had endured, he and Carol promised to help find them a new home. Fury suggested they be allowed to stay on Earth temporarily. Fury set about making that temporary solution livable. He recruited a team of alien technicians whose skills and technology could help. The Skrulls' physiology made them immune to radiation, so Fury deliberately selected an area humans would avoid, a region near an abandoned Soviet nuclear power plant. For years, the Skrulls lived there in relative peace, hidden from outsiders. Some were dissatisfied, feeling Fury had not fully honored his promises, but for now, most were content. Fury had brought several captured Hydra agents, so-called nine-headed serpent operatives, to the Skrull camp. Although the detainees' information had been extracted by conventional interrogation, Fury couldn't shake the suspicion that Hydra had deeply infiltrated S-Shield. He wanted to use a more specialized method to verify everything, a memory-reading device the Skrulls kept in the camp. When the Quinjet hovered over the camp, the Skrulls showed no alarm. Fury's arrivals had long since become routine. Green-skinned figures peered curiously through barbed wire at the black aircraft. Half the camp preferred human guises, the other half remained in their natural forms, and most of them had never been beyond the camp's perimeter. When the ramp lowered, Fury stepped out. Although the site was close to the derelict power plant, the spot Fury had chosen wasn't dangerously radioactive, so he wore no protective suit. To an outsider, the Skrulls might all look the same, but after years of contact, Fury could recognize individuals even in their Skrull forms. Talos, he greeted as the leader approached. Talos had been one of the Skrulls Fury recruited to work with S-Shield, occasionally returning to the camp for various matters. This time, Fury's visit coincided with one of those returns. After the usual greetings, Fury explained why he'd come. Talos listened with concern. Several of his people already worked inside S-Shield, and the idea that another faction might have infiltrated the organization hit close to home. Fury asked Talos to have a few Skrulls bring the sedated Hydra agents into the camp. Skrulls could transform so completely into another person that even loved ones couldn't tell the difference. If a Skrull also took on someone's memories, it could effectively replace that person entirely. Within the camp, they kept a device for doing exactly that, the mind extractor. Talos had once used the mind extractor years ago to pull memories from Carol Danvers herself. Fury now intended to use it on the Hydra suspects to corroborate what they'd confessed. The unconscious level 5 nine-headed serpent agent was placed on the device. Being unconscious made extraction easier. The process works best when the subject offers no resistance. The mind extractor looked crude. Materials were limited on Earth, but it functioned perfectly. Talos made the necessary adjustments, and two mechanical ports at the head of the device discharged currents of energy. The ends glowed purple as twin streams struck the agent's skull, making him tremble. Talus stepped forward and pressed a finger to the man's forehead. The spot under his touch shone with the same purple light. Through that contact, Talus accessed the agent's memories. Had a human tried that, the sudden flood of another person's life would have left them disoriented, possibly catatonic. Skrulls, because of their racial abilities and specific training, could use the mind extractor without harm. After a short while, Talus withdrew his hand and met Fury's eyes. He reported everything he had seen, especially the details about Hydra, in a steady stream. Fury listened, silent and intent. When Talus finished, Fury fell into thought for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Chapter 150, Shopping. Nick Fury calls Fifth Avenue in Manhattan was everything Noah remembered, and more. Skyscrapers rose along the boulevard, their glass facades flashing in the morning sun. Crowds moved like a river on the sidewalks, a swirl of languages and skin tones, tourists, office workers, families out for the day. He hadn't been here in a long time. Noah lingered just outside the exit of the underground parking garage and took it all in. His old home wasn't far, a 10-minute taxi ride, and when he used to live nearby, he came here often with family and friends. Since he'd gotten the system and become absorbed in other things, Fifth Avenue had fallen off the map. Today, he'd brought Gwen and Lysandra for a rare, relaxed day of shopping and sightseeing. He'd just come from Camartage after discussing a few eternal matters with the Ancient One. He hadn't stayed. Instead, he'd taken a heavy stack of books from the library and returned to the manor. They were for Gwen, older, denser tomes than the ones Noah had read when he'd first studied Camartage magic. He believed that after studying them, Gwen could become a proper Camartage mage. When Noah arrived with the books, Gwen had gone slack. She'd stared at the thick bundle in his hands like a statue, unresponsive even to Noah teasingly pinching her cheek. For the whole morning, she'd been low and distant. Noah decided the best remedy was to drag her somewhere lively to forget, at least for a little while, with the caveat that the books would still have to be studied when they got home. They had just parked. The underground lot and the streets above were crowded and slow. Noah could have solved the congestion by taking to the air, but he'd let things be. All three of them, Noah, Gwen, and Lysandra, were dressed for the season. Autumn was already well underway, and the air had a bite to it. They were all wearing matching hoodies made by Gwen, the only differences being color, like couple outfits, but on three people. Gwen held Lysandra's hand and tugged her toward every window display. Noah took Lysandra's other hand and led them into the bustle. They were arresting to look at, and heads turned as they walked, but none of them minded. Both sides of the avenue were a parade of shops. Glittering displays of couture, bakeries sending out warm smells, gadget stores, and toy shops. Street performers drew little crowds, breakdancers, a violinist, a group of drummers, and children floated by clutching balloons printed with Iron Man and Swift Wind swordsman figures. Noah smirked and wondered whether Tony collected licensing fees for every balloon. Gwen drifted from window to window, eyes catching at every new cut and fabric. Noah told her if she liked something she could buy it, but she seemed more interested in the styles than in spending. Doll shops, however, captivated her attention. After a while, Noah's hands were full of shopping bags. They paused in a small square where a band had gathered a crowd. The music was pleasantly melodic, and lots of pedestrians lingered to listen. Noah tapped his foot and nodded along, the low-key rhythm grounding him. He'd never been particularly musical, but perhaps if he ever had to draw a music-related hero like Jean, he'd gain a better ear. A vibration in his pocket pulled him out of the moment. It was his phone. In the middle of a crowd, it would have been awkward to project a call, so he kept the device in hand. He looked down at the screen and saw the name that made his stomach tighten. Director Fury. Noah's mind raced. Fury had used a Skrull memory extraction device in Soviet Russia. Noah had heard the story. And from those memories, he'd become convinced there were Hydra moles inside S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury had been shaken to the core. If Noah's future vision had been right, Fury might need help tracking down the traitors. Noah, is everything all right? He asked as he answered. Noah, I've already identified the people you caught earlier. They're Hydra. Everything you saw in the future is true, Fury said without preamble. Noah feigned surprise. He already suspected their identities. Fury continued, voice hard and urgent. They're dangerous. I don't know how many there are. I need your help. Fury told him he'd sent a mission invitation. Noah listened for a moment, then kept his tone casual. All right, call me when you get back from Soviet Russia. He ended the call, claiming he had things to do. Fury stared at his own phone for a long beat afterward, turning the problem over in his head. He planned to call Tony and Rogers as soon as he returned. Noah hung up and set his phone down, then let his attention drift back to the busy street. When he stared at the caller ID before ending the call, he'd seen Fury's location: Soviet Russia. Fury must have taken extraordinary steps to hide his whereabouts, but Noah's tech was more advanced. Ordinary protections didn't fool him. He didn't know why Fury was in Soviet Russia. Shouldn't Fury be interrogating Hydra agents in some hidden base? Did Fury himself have a base there? Noah didn't even know there were Skrulls in Soviet Russia, or that they might be working with Fury. He hadn't watched Secret Invasion in his previous life. He'd only seen a few clips and had a rough idea of the story, and since everyone said the show was terrible, he hadn't bothered seeking it out. He wasn't surprised, though, that Fury had reached out to him. With Hydra embedded in S.H.I.E.L.D., Fury had good reason to distrust his own organization and turn to allies outside it. Noah had half expected Fury to call him again. He even wondered if Fury would try Captain America next. He decided to wait and see what Fury planned when he called back. By then, the music playing in the square had reached its finale. The crowd broke into applause and Gwen joined in. "Let's find something to eat," Noah said, checking the time. It was nearly noon. He decided not to head home, better to eat out today. The cooks at outside restaurants weren't Lysandra, but their food was perfectly palatable, and they weren't picky. "Okay, can we go to KFC?" Gwen asked, suddenly excited. "KFC?" Noah blinked. "Fried chicken? Yes, I've seen pictures and videos online. I've always wanted to try it," she said, blinking innocently. Lysandra had never cooked that sort of fried food at home, and Gwen had felt a little shy about asking because so many people online called those foods junk food. She didn't really understand what that meant, beyond it sounding unhealthy, high in oil, salt, and sugar, the kind of thing that could make ordinary people gain weight if they ate too much. That didn't concern them. With their enhanced bodies, they could digest things ordinary humans could not, so junk food posed no real danger. "If you want it, Gwen, let's go," Noah said. "I haven't had it in a while, and I'm not opposed." He turned to Lysandra. "What do you think?" Lysandra nodded. "I'll look for a well-reviewed branch nearby." "That sounds perfect," Noah said. Lysandra pulled up local reviews and picked out a store. "Yay, let's go," Gwen squealed. They set off toward the chosen restaurant. On Fury's end, once Noah had hung up, he went straight into preparations. He'd brought along Talus, the Skrull leader, and several other Skrulls who had returned with him and were now working with S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury's manpower was thin, and he needed the Skrull's unique abilities. He'd also packed the Mind Extractor. With Talus and the other Skrulls, they could reassemble the device back at the base and use it to pull memories. After a flight, the Quinjet returned to Fury's secret base and touched down. Fury and the Skrulls stepped out. Several of the Skrulls carried the Mind Extractor in pieces and followed him inside. Coulson, Black Widow, and Hawkeye had been at the base for the night, getting some rest. Even with Hydra's infiltration unsettling everyone, they knew being rested would make them better able to handle whatever came next. The three were in one of the rooms when Fury walked in with the team and the equipment. "Director, you're back," Coulson said, looking up as familiar faces filed in. Coulson glanced at the Skrulls behind Fury and was about to ask who they were, but it felt awkward to do so in front of them. Fury cut in easefully. "Don't worry, Coulson. These agents are with us. I can confirm they aren't Hydra." That was a relief. Coulson relaxed and greeted the arrivals by name. He'd worked with all of them before. "Agent Talus, long time no see. Glad to see you under the circumstances." While Coulson exchanged pleasantries, Fury got down to the grim business of assembling a response. He picked up a comm and began to gather other allies. There were still some Skrull operatives in S.H.I.E.L.D., but contacting them wasn't convenient right now. He needed to bring in outside power. That meant Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. One a technological genius in an armored suit, the other a super soldier from World War II recently reawakened. Fury had to marshal every resource he could to deal with what might come next. He tapped the screen. "Steve, it's me, Fury. I have something very important to tell you. It's about Hydra. Chapter 152, Nick Fury, a bunch of idiots. I'm sending someone to pick you up now, Steve. Stay alert and watch your surroundings." Nick Fury hung up and slipped his phone into his pocket. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his forehead, trying to shake the fatigue. He hadn't slept in almost a day and a night, and at his age, well over 50, this lifestyle was getting harder to bear. The call had been to Steve Rogers, the World War II soldier they'd recently pulled from the ice, Captain America. When it came to Hydra, aside from an aging Peggy Carter, Rogers was probably the most experienced person left who'd actually fought them. Fury made a point of noting the difference between the Hydra of World War II and whatever had wormed its way into S.H.I.E.L.D. now. Still, Captain America was someone he could trust. A man frozen for nearly 70 years couldn't possibly be colluding with Hydra. Rogers had initially thought Fury was joking. In his memory, the Red Skull had died alongside him, and there was no reason Peggy or Howard Stark would have allowed any remnants to escape. Fury didn't know how to answer Rogers' question about when and how Hydra had infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. He still lacked a clear picture. The memories they'd pulled from the nine-headed serpent agents hadn't provided all the answers he wanted. Fury suspected the infiltration began after the war. He'd seen files showing that when S.H.I.E.L.D. formed, Howard and Peggy had recruited German scientists into the research teams. Some of those men could easily have been Hydra operatives. The thought infuriated him. If it had been him, he would never have brought recent enemies into his ranks without ironclad means to control them. After finishing the call with Captain America, Fury dispatched a few subordinates to the agreed pickup point. He paused over whether to call Tony Stark. In the end, he decided against it. Iron Man leaving New York would draw too much attention from every curious agency and opportunist around. Not now. Fury let his eyes rest for a moment, then thumbed out a few messages to Noah on his phone. He'd already been in contact with Noah while in Soviet Russia. Noah had asked Fury to send word when he was back. Now that Fury was in New York, he sent Noah the base location. At a moment like this, the secrecy of the base mattered less than getting people where they needed to be. A soft knock came at the office door. "Enter." It was Coulson and his team. Coulson stepped in, looking troubled. "Director, I found that aside from Talos, the others are gone. There's no trace of them in the base. Could something be wrong?" Fury steepled his fingers and watched Coulson. "They're fine. Don't get yourself worked up. I sent them out on a mission. We've captured a few Hydra operatives. If they didn't come back for a long time, it would have raised suspicion." Coulson's brow furrowed. "Director, are you saying you sent agents to impersonate Hydra and infiltrate the enemy? Isn't that too risky?" Fury gave a short, confident laugh. "Not to worry. These agents are specially trained. They'll be fine. Besides, I gave them every sort of information we extracted. They know exactly who to be." Coulson still looked unconvinced. Fury added, "They're Skrulls. Mimicry and shapeshifting are their talent by birth. They used a mind extractor to obtain the memories of the nine-headed serpent agents and can replace them perfectly." Coulson absorbed that and, seeing Fury's certainty, fell silent. "Understood. Get ready," Fury said as he rose. "I've brought 2 helpers over. We'll have a small meeting soon." Coulson's face lit up at the word helpers. He straightened his sleeves. Iron Man? Noah? Captain America? The thought that his idol might walk through the door put a spring in his step. Steve Rogers had woken up unsettled, and they still hadn't had any proper time to talk. Maybe now he would. Outside the city, on the roof of a long-abandoned high-rise, a man in a hoodie stood at the edge, the dark fabric pulled up to obscure his face. The cold wind picked at the hem of the garment, revealing a heavily muscled frame beneath. Steve Rogers stared out across the ruined skyline, deep in thought. He'd never expected that after sleeping for 70 years, he would still be facing Hydra. It was an ugly reminder that some things never fully die. A Quinjet phased into view behind him, uncloaking with a soft whir. Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, poked her head out of the hatch and waved. Cap! Half a city away, Noah had finished his errands and come back to his apartment. He set the shopping bags on the table and glanced down at his phone. Nick Fury had sent the base address. Okay, I'll go check it out, he muttered, rubbing at his eyes. No rest for the wicked. He opened a teleportation portal with a practiced swirl of energy and stepped through. Back at the base, Fury's earpiece chirped. Officer, there's an unknown energy fluctuation nearby. Find the source of that signature, Fury ordered into the comm. He paused, then picked up his phone and sent a quick message. Noah, are you already there? A moment later, his phone pinged. Yes, I'm nearby. Director Fury's base is really out of the way, Noah said, taking in the mountain forest around him after coming through the teleport gate and arriving near the address Fury had given. Lately, he seemed to be visiting places like this all the time, deep, isolated wooded valleys whenever he was tracking Banner or the leader. He spread his magic to sweep the area, then pressed the button at his waist. Black nanobots crawled up from his legs and formed the Source Project armor. He hovered roughly 1,000 meters from Fury's location. He hadn't teleported directly to the exact spot Fury sent. There were more people there, and no need to make an entrance. In the armor, he flew toward the base. The facility looked like a medium-sized factory. A perimeter wall ringed the site. Including the enclosed grounds, the whole compound was about 1,000 square meters. Noah's scan showed most structures were above ground, very little below. Large underground construction was expensive and difficult. Unless you had era-transcending nanotech like Noah's, digging deep was a major undertaking. Even someone as resourceful at procuring funds as Fury wouldn't sink that kind of money. Better to hide a base in rugged terrain where modern surveillance missed it. Nature did the rest. On his HUD, a message popped up. Director Fury, have you arrived? I'm at the gate. Open up, Noah replied silently. Above the entrance, a handful of guards had already spotted him and leveled weapons. They hesitated when they recognized him, but nobody relaxed completely. Noah glanced down at them, and with a casual point he extended his hand. The guards tensed, their guns suddenly lifted from their grips as if pulled by an invisible force, then came apart midair into scattered parts that clattered onto the concrete. Several men swallowed hard. One of them, after a beat, turned to press an alarm and grabbed a radio to warn the others. All right, stop scaring my people, Fury's voice said, sharp. Fury hurried out and saw what had happened. Noah floated down and with the armor's gravitic controls, drew the scattered firearm pieces toward a nearby table, assembling them into a neat pile. He'd used the same technology to make the weapons come apart, Lyssandra's gravitic systems integrated into the Source Project. He felt like he could cosplay Magneto. No, probably Polaris. He hadn't reached Magneto level yet. Fury. Long time, Noah said. Fury's eyes were rimmed red. He looked worn. We'll talk. Another guest hasn't arrived yet, Fury said. No one else? Noah asked. A red blip on his scan sped toward them. What a coincidence. Your other guest seems to have arrived, Noah said. He turned. A cloaked Quinjet was approaching. Its stealth couldn't hide from the armor's sensors. As Noah pointed it out, the skin of the jet shimmered and peeled back from the nose. The Quinjet thumped down, dust clouding the landing area. The hatch opened, and a team of agents filed out. Then Natasha and Steve came down, laughing together. Black Widow had a way of warming even Captain America, who'd been dour since waking, into a smile. Director, Natasha greeted Fury, her eyes flicking briefly to Noah. Fury nodded, then addressed Steve. Steve Rogers, I'm glad you made it. What you told me was too important to ignore, Steve said. Hydra's shadow had returned. He wanted this threat gone. He looked at Noah's armor, high-tech even to him, and felt slightly out of step, as did everyone else. Fury, who's he? Come inside. I'll introduce you on the way. They moved into the base. This is Swift-Wind Swordsman. That's his code name, Fury said to Steve, keeping Noah's true name private. He provided the intel about you under the ice. Without him, it could have been a long time before you saw daylight again. Maybe never. Oh, Steve said, taking Noah's offered hand. Steve Rogers, thank you. Without that information, I might have stayed under the ice forever. No problem, Captain America. I've heard a lot about you, Noah replied. Deeper in, at the conference room, Coulson stood waiting and looked more than a little excited. He approached, gave Fury a quick report, and then nodded to Noah in greeting. Restraint. he wouldn't use names. "Captain, hi, I'm Coulson," he said as he reached Steve, practically beaming. He shook Steve's hand like a fan meeting his hero, then even got him to sign a little card he carried. The room hummed with the strange, tense energy of people reunited and plans about to be made. Fury closed the door behind them, and for the first time, the hush was broken by the weight of intent everyone felt. They were here to cut Hydra down, and this time they hoped to be more than a threat's ripple. Chapter 154, Ding. Found a scroll. Noah scanned the conference room as he walked in. Besides the familiar face of Hawkeye, there were several people he didn't recognize. From their uniforms, they were S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. But one of them triggered a peculiar feeling in Noah, an odd, nagging sense that something was off. Hawkeye Barton leaned against the wall, watching people file in. At the table sat several agents, including a middle-aged white man with brown hair threaded with gray and a somewhat gaunt face. On the surface, he looked perfectly human, and Noah's usual observational checks betrayed nothing unusual. Still, Noah's instincts, an almost sixth sense awareness amplified by the magic he could feel humming in him, registered a discrepancy. "Lysandra, scan that guy," Noah murmured inside the Iron Man suit. He could give instructions privately inside the suit, and because he was sealed in armor, no one outside could hear him. He would use both technology and magic. As he spoke, he extended a thin, probing thread of magic toward the agent. Talos felt it. The scroll sitting at the table grew flustered. When the conference room door opened, Nick Fury, Black Widow, and two others walked in. One was a broad-shouldered blonde whom Talos recognized as Captain America. The other wore a high-tech Iron Man suit. As a Skrull who had traveled the universe, Talos had seen many Iron Man armors. This one looked like early tech to him, but he could tell that it was still extremely powerful. For some reason, the man in the suit seemed to be looking straight at him. Then a sudden wave of force rippled over Talos's body. Skrulls are acutely sensitive to different kinds of energy. The sweep of power made him shiver and react violently. The chair scraped across the floor with a harsh screech. Heads turned. "What's wrong, Agent Talos?" Fury asked, frowning. Talos forced a calm expression. "No, nothing. I just slipped." He was lying, of course, and his unease deepened. The energy spike had come from the man in the Iron Man suit. Had his cover been blown? He couldn't say anything publicly. He would take Fury aside later. Noah was mildly surprised that the Skrull had sensed his scan, but his probe had already finished. Lysandra, the suit's integrated AI, returned data. Noah took a seat and watched her analysis silently. "Noah, the scan shows that while the target appears human externally, his internal anatomy differs significantly from human norms," Lysandra reported. "I picked up the same thing when I probed him with magic. He's not human, probably an alien," Noah replied, listening as Fury began briefing everyone on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s situation. Noah's mind drifted to a show he vaguely remembered from a previous life, one he hadn't really watched but had seen clips about. It featured shape-shifting aliens called Skrulls. They could perfectly mimic another person's appearance and even seemed able to access memories, whether through innate ability or tech he wasn't sure. "This one's likely a Skrull," Noah said. "They can copy people's looks precisely. They can't change everything internally, though. That's what the scan picked up. They also can acquire memories, and with the right tech, they can replace people entirely." Lysandra opened a new entry in her database. Skrulls. Noah didn't have a deep impression of them from his past life. The post-Avengers movies hadn't held his interest, but he remembered enough. Skrulls' mimicry was almost undetectable visually, but internal organs and tissue could betray them. They had methods of extracting memories to smooth over their impersonations. In some stories, they kidnapped and imprisoned humans to take their places. War Machine's Rhodes, for example, had been one target. What worried Noah most was that Skrulls possessed advanced tech that could mimic the powers of other beings. By acquiring the DNA of someone powerful, they could become super Skrulls, replicating abilities, although usually in weakened form. In extreme cases, they duplicated powers on the level of Thanos or Captain Marvel. Noah wondered idly whether a Skrull could replicate the unique abilities within his own body, his Vastaya bloodline traits like Set's, for example, if they obtained his DNA. Maybe, Learned abilities, like magic he'd acquired later, might be beyond their reach, and replicated powers tended to be weaker than the original. Still, a collection of such abilities in one body could be dangerous. He added scrolls to his mental list of threats. Fury spoke with a serious expression, outlining S-Shield's current posture. Noah listened, amused despite himself at how readily the director promised big things he might not be able to deliver. He kept that thought to himself for now. Chapter 155, Keep Your Troops in Place. Noah thought, Director Fury really would use anyone. He let dangerous beings live on Earth and made empty promises to them. Didn't Fury know that, if they are not of our kind, their hearts will surely be different? What Fury didn't know was that besides the scrolls already on Earth, millions more still wandered the galaxy. The scrolls on Earth could call those wandering kin at any time. In the secret invasion, Talos, after realizing Fury hadn't kept his promise for decades, and that Fury had even left for S-Forward in space, seemingly ignoring the problem, decided to summon the wandering scrolls to Earth. His thinking was simple. Fury hadn't found a home planet for them, so they could stay here temporarily. The scroll population on Earth shot past 1 million. Talos didn't want a war with humans, he just wanted his people somewhere safe. Not every scroll agreed. Gravik, for one, had idolized Fury after Fury and Captain Marvel rescued his group and promised help. But when Fury failed to follow through, Gravik turned bitter and violent. He corrupted others, hatched plans to replace world leaders with scroll impersonators, and aimed to seize power. If someone wasn't strong enough to control these unstable elements, they should never have let them live unchecked. S-Shield and Fury clearly hadn't understood that, and the consequences were obvious. Noah also blamed Captain Marvel, Carol, some. She'd been the first to promise the scrolls a planet. Decades later, it seemed she'd forgotten. Fury and Earth were the ones left to pick up the pieces. Noah decided to watch the scrolls more carefully. If things escalated and 1 million scrolls flooded Earth, as in Secret Invasion, it would be a nightmare. Scroll shapeshifting made detection impossible with current tech, and he'd be stuck cleaning up the mess. Recalling Fury's earlier call from Soviet Russia, Noah suspected Fury had placed that scroll contingent there. He planned to trace Fury's exact location and, when he had time, find the scroll base. How to deal with them he would decide later. In the conference room, Director Fury stood at the circular table and leaned on it as he briefed the gathered officers. Hydra hasn't realized they've been exposed, he said. I've already sent teams, plus a few Skrulls using our latest disguise masks, into their ranks to gather intelligence, but we still don't know the size of their network or whether they have forces outside S-Shield. The Hydra members we captured aren't high-ranking. Even after using the mind extractor, they couldn't give us the answers we need. So you have a plan? Steve asked. The situation felt delicate. Hydra had been rooted within S-Shield, for who knew how long and likely controlled part of S-Shield's infrastructure. A head-on fight now would mean massive losses. My plan is to hold our ground and maintain the status quo, Fury replied. We wait for our undercover agents to bring back enough intel so we can take Hydra out in one clean operation. It was the consensus around the table. Hydra didn't know it was exposed, so S-Shield had time to investigate, map out the insiders' roles, and then strike while the enemy remained oblivious. Noah, Fury added, this is preventive work. I called you here because when the time comes to act, we'll need people like you ready. Noah leaned back and folded his hands. Then why didn't you call Tony Stark? He's part of this, isn't he? Fury gave a small, tired smile. Tony's identity is sensitive right now. All departments are watching him closely. It's not convenient to bring him in here. I'll brief him personally when I can. And Captain America? Steve cut in, clearly uneasy. How do you know Hydra isn't monitoring me? They've watched me before. Fury met Steve's gaze. I thought of that. Before we moved you, we had a Skrull who could pass for you, stay behind, make it look like you were still at home. Hydra's surveillance should have been fooled. All right, Fury said after an hour of briefing, his voice rough from speaking. We'll adjourn for now. He dismissed the meeting, then singled out Noah before anyone left. There was something he wanted to discuss in private. Chapter 156, Conversation with Nick Fury. After leaving the conference room, Noah was ready to explore the base and find out what Director Fury had been keeping here. Lysandra was already working, slipping into the base systems to pull up whatever data she could. Noah kept moving, watching the 3D model unfold across his mask display as she mapped the facility. A voice called out from behind him. Noah turned. It was Nick Fury, dressed head to toe in black shirt, black trousers, and his signature black leather trench coat. The outfit made him look even more imposing, every inch the director. Director Fury, is something wrong? Noah slowed and let Fury catch up. He stayed in his project armor. He hadn't taken it off. With scrolls on base, he wasn't about to risk exposing his DNA or giving away anything that could be traced. Noah, Fury said, calling him by name once he realized they were alone. There's something I want to ask you. Noah glanced down at Fury from the 2 meters of armored height and kept one eye on the mask readout. What is it? Fury walked to stand beside the black armor. About Hydra. Have you seen anything else about them in the future? Anything important, if it's convenient to say? Noah answered casually. He wasn't about to hand over sensitive future intel for free. Mostly what I mentioned before, nothing especially new. But in the future, I saw, Noah added, you do get Hydra out of S-Shield. The cost was high. Fury's brows shot up. What cost? The agency ends up being disbanded, Noah said. Fury froze, thinking it over. S-Shield was his creation. The idea of it being dissolved hit him hard. He'd been furious when he'd heard there was a mole. How much worse would disbandment be? Yet he also reasoned that this vision described the timeline before they'd been tipped off. Now that they had Hydra's information in advance, the course of events could change. You said that vision was from before you told us, Fury said aloud, more to himself than to Noah. If the situation is different now, maybe the future won't play out like that. Noah confirmed it. The moment I reveal a future, it starts shifting. That's always happened. For a heartbeat, Noah's mind wandered. The Time Variance Authority existed in Marvel mythos to police timelines. He who remains in Kang's rules insisted on a single sacred timeline. By appearing and altering events, he should have been a time criminal. Why hadn't TVA agents come to arrest him? He filed the thought away to ask the system later. The system might know something he didn't. Fury composed himself and gave a nod. All right, knowing the enemy beforehand puts us in a better position. Take care of the next steps. Help us where you can. No problem. Noah turned a little to look at Fury. One more thing. Tell Coulson to look into those 2 people I mentioned earlier. See if they're Hydra. Fury's expression tightened. He remembered the briefing, how Coulson had introduced Noah's parents and mentioned that 2 team members had survived while the rest had been wiped out. Noah had suspected those 2 survivors of treachery. Fury had assumed Noah's grief was coloring his judgment. If Noah believed they were Hydra, Fury would have Coulson investigate quietly. I will, Fury said. When I find something, I'll report back. He gave Noah a curt nod and started to leave. I'm going to speak with Talos. There are things to clear up. Okay, I'll keep looking around. Noah resumed his sweep of the base, following the 3D map on his mask. Lysandra finished the scan and patched him a detailed layout. He moved through corridors, studying access points and restricted zones, but careful not to loiter where he might draw attention. Fury, meanwhile, went to find Talos. During the meeting, he'd noticed odd behavior from the scroll and wanted to know why. He tracked Talos's location on his communicator and followed the signal to a quiet lounge. When he pushed the door open, Talos sat alone with his eyes closed, as if meditating. The sound made Talos open his eyes. Fury shut the door and sat beside him. What's wrong? Talos exhaled slowly. In the conference just now, I think Swiftwind Swordsman might have seen through me. He may have discovered my identity. Fury's jaw tightened. Talos's scroll identity was one of the most sensitive secrets on base. Aside from Carol Danvers, almost no one knew. Human technology couldn't detect mimetic ability, but Noah was different. He had off-world tech and strange powers. If anyone could pierce a scroll's disguise, it might be him. If he did see you, Fury said, thinking rapidly, we'll handle it. I'll talk to Swiftwind Swordsman directly. If I explain your situation to him, he shouldn't have any problem with you. Talos nodded, still tense. Fury's mind moved to solutions, to damage control and contingencies. For now, he'd have to trust Noah to be discreet, and hoped that any future Noah had seen could be redirected. Chapter 157, Newbie Protection from the System. System, do you know about the Time Variance Authority? The system does not have permission to view information known by the summoner, and therefore cannot answer the summoner's question. Huh? Noah frowned. Then do you know why the Time Variance Authority hasn't come to this universe? He really wanted to know. His interference had already changed the plot of this Marvel universe drastically. The arrival of the Void World alone had added an entire universe-sized dimension. Noah couldn't imagine the TVA, or any similarly powerful agency, not noticing such a massive disturbance. Based on the summoner's question, the system has found the corresponding answer. When the summoner awakened his past life memories and activated the system automatically added a shielding barrier to this universe. Powerful existences in the multiverse will be unable to discover or enter this world. If the summoner actively travels to other universes, this barrier will be broken. Holy crap, system, you can do that? Noah exclaimed, stunned. He hadn't expected the system to be capable of acting on a cosmic scale. But the system had already shown itself powerful, granting single-target abilities like the Dragon King and artifacts like the Mountain and Sea Scroll that spanned multiple universes. In that light, shielding a whole universe didn't seem impossible. I didn't expect there to be a novice protection period, Noah thought. That made sense. The Marvel cosmos is a multiverse, and the version Noah inhabited, the MCU, was weaker than the comic book universes. If a truly powerful being from a comic universe suddenly stumbled in, this world could be finished. The system's newbie protection prevented that. Once Noah's strength grew, he might even be able to compete with those comic universe entities, though not the bug-level ones. So the reason the TVA hasn't cleaned up this timeline is because of the system, Noah concluded. He remembered that before he transmigrated, the Rock-on 2 series had just started airing, and he hadn't finished it. He only recalled that at the end of Rock-on 1, He Who Remains, Kang, was stabbed to death by female Rock-on, which then sparked a multiversal war. He didn't know how much of that had happened in this reality. If this was the main MCU, Rock-on's transmigration event might not even have occurred yet. The key event that led to Rock-on's move was the main Avengers traveling to a parallel universe to collect the Infinity Stones, and this universe hadn't necessarily reached that point. I'll explore other universes later, Noah decided, meaning travel beyond the shield, an option for after he'd become stronger. Meanwhile, staring at a sign on a heavy door that read "No entry for non-senior personnel," Noah engaged his armor's stealth mode, activated Ghost Step, and phased straight through the thick steel. While Fury was talking to everyone above, several Skrulls disguised as members of the Nine-Headed Serpent had already returned to Hydra's stronghold using memories they'd copied. They reported their mission as a failure to invite the leader. What they told Hydra was, after they encountered the leader, they found that Swift-Wind Swordsman had beaten them to it. There was a conflict, and the leader was eliminated by Swift-Wind Swordsman. In the Skrulls' memories, they'd been pinned to the ground and hadn't actually seen how the leader died. Since the mission target was dead, their objective was technically complete. Still, Hydra demanded intel on Swift-Wind Swordsman, which left the Skrulls stumped. They improvised descriptions based on grunts and sounds heard while they lay helpless in their memories. Even they, recalling the aura of Swift-Wind Swordsman, felt dread. When had such a fierce man appeared on Earth? After that, several Skrulls officially infiltrated Hydra to start gathering intelligence for Fury. In a galaxy many light-years from Earth, a vast armada drifted through space. Warships hovered amid massive, whale-like creatures that swam around them, semi-mechanized, armored beasts. If Noah had been there, he would have recognized them as Chitauri Leviathans from the Battle of New York. This fleet belonged to Thanos' Chitauri Legion. The largest vessel at the center was the Chitauri Mothership, the hive-mind core of the Legion. Destroy it, and the Chitauri linked to it would die. The mothership carried the bulk of the Chitauri soldiers and their weapons, truly a gigantic mobile war fortress. How's the research coming along? Inside one of the mothership's labs, a blue-haired, pale-skinned woman with blue paint along her nose and black horn-like protrusions at her temples leaned over a Chitauri researcher. This was Proxima Midnight, a member of Thanos' Black Order. "I've given you enough time. If you can't give us what we want, none of you will live." Beside her, a gray-skinned male with a ferocious face and a black hood trimmed in gold spoke coldly. Corvus Glaive, also of the Black Order, and Proxima's husband, stood like a blade waiting to be used. Around them were not only Chitauri researchers, but captives from many alien races. The Chitauri had gathered scientists from across the universe. Their goal, to locate the Space Stone, one of the legendary Infinity Stones, determine its coordinates, and open a teleportation portal directly to it. Chapter 158. The researchers were arrested. Thanos had sent Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight to find the Space Stone. Through the Mind Stone he already held, he could faintly sense the locations of the other Infinity Stones. But if a stone was sealed or hidden, its signal became difficult to detect. Recently, one stone had begun emitting energy continuously from a particular region of the universe. The interstone resonance made it clear. The signal came from the Space Stone. The location, however, made Thanos hesitate. The stone was on a blue planet inside Asgard's sphere of influence, populated by natives who had not yet reached the interstellar age. Rather than personally lead a massive invasion, Thanos chose to test the waters. He did not yet want to start a full-scale war with powerful forces until he knew where all the stones were. So he sent two of the Black Order, Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight, to Earth first, to probe Asgard's strength and to assess Earth's defenses. Thanos did not pick that target at random. Years ago, a powerful being had repelled a Kree fleet and declared that a planet called Earth was under her protection, forbidding the Kree from attacking. That declaration, and the name Captain Marvel, had spread across the cosmos. Thanos had taken note of Captain Marvel and wanted to learn how much she and Asgard could complicate his plans. This time, he sent more than muscle. He entrusted the Mind Stone itself to Corvus Glaive. If Corvus and Proxima succeeded, Thanos would gain a second Infinity Stone. He believed his forces were strong enough that even if they failed, they could still recover the stone once they knew its location. But events had not gone as in the original timeline. Because of Noah, Loki did not fall from the Bifrost Bridge. Thanos' forces had not recovered the Asgardian prince adrift in space. Without Loki to open a teleport, Corvus and his team were forced to detour across countless worlds, seizing researchers and trying to reverse engineer ways to breach mystical barriers, and they were making little headway. On board a Chitauri mothership, Corvus Glaive towered over a group of trembling researchers. Hooded in black, his eyes cold, he issued a promise that felt more like a threat. "If you can't produce results, you'll all have to answer to my Lord Thanos' wrath." The captured scientists flinched. Since being taken, they had watched other researchers, people brought in just like them, be executed when they failed to deliver. Corvus's reputation for cold-blooded killing made every small mistake a potential death sentence. "Please, my lord, give us more time," a pink-skinned Kree researcher stammered. "Since the Asgardian named Brilli arrived, our progress has accelerated. We're very close." The pink-skinned Kree looked human except for skin color. In the Kree Empire, blue-skinned Kree were the original purebloods, but generations of expansion and interbreeding had produced pink-skinned Kree who had risen to equal status. This particular scientist had been stationed at a research base on a small Kree-aligned world. When the Chitauri struck, the base was destroyed. A handful survived, captured, and brought aboard the mothership to work for their captors. The tasks the Chitauri demanded were alien to them. They had been provided with vast reams of data, much of it incomprehensible, much of it Asgardian in nature. Mystical concepts and technologies the researchers had never encountered before clogged their experiments, and progress stalled. They watched fellow captives cut down for failing to meet impossible deadlines and were terrified it would be their turn. Everything changed a few days earlier when the Chitauri seized a wandering Asgardian researcher named Brilli. Brilli's presence had given them a breakthrough. The Asgardians' knowledge had unlocked pieces of the puzzle and greatly sped up their work. Yet Corvus was impatient. "I'll give you one more day," Corvus said. "If you still can't complete the mission, I'll replace you." The Kree researcher forced a smile and returned to his station. They had heard the stories about the Mad Titan, about Thanos carving planets in half. Even if they completed the task, falling into Thanos' hands did not guarantee survival. But under the threat of death, there was no choice but to keep working, carefully and relentlessly. They toiled through the hours, rechecking calculations and running simulations. Then suddenly, a cheer broke out among the group. "We did it," one of them shouted. Chapter 159, "The teleporter is complete." "We did it!" The shout echoed through the research cabin of the Chitauri ship. Kree scientists crowded around the centerpiece of their work, faces alight with joy. Some even had tears of relief. For the first time in days, they felt the threat of death ease. Their lives were not at immediate risk. The commotion drew the attention of the Chitauri soldiers posted outside. They peered through the lab door's glass and saw the researchers celebrating. One of the soldiers left at once to fetch Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight. Corvus and Proxima arrived quickly. They had been itching for results so they could carry out Thanos' orders. It had been days on this godforsaken rock, and neither of them had any patience left for delays. The Chitauri at the door opened it for them, and they stepped into the lab. The Kree researchers immediately noticed, and the jubilation died as if doused by a bucket of cold water. "You were loud enough to be heard outside." "Explain," Corvus Glaive demanded, surveying the room. Everyone lowered their heads. "My lord," a Kree scientist stepped forward, trying to speak for the group. "We've found a way to open a teleportation portal." Corvus's harsh expression softened just a touch. After so many wasted days, this was at last progress. He and Proxima exchanged glances and moved to the center of the lab where the device stood, a metal apparatus about a meter tall. "Based on the parameters you gave us, my lord, after calculations and repeated experiments, we located a powerful energy source," the researcher said. "Using it, we can open a teleportation portal." "Can it transport people?" Proxima asked. "We can open a portal with that energy," the researcher answered, voice trembling as he gauged Corvus's reaction. "But at present, the portal will only allow 2 people to pass through at a time." Corvus's face darkened. "What did you say? After all this time, only 2? He grabbed the researcher by the throat and hoisted him off his feet. The lab fell silent. The other Kree backed away in fear. "I need a portal that can transport an army," Corvus snarled. He shook the man. "Do you think I brought a Chitauri fleet here so 2 people could go through at a time?" "My lord, cough, cough!" The researcher choked, his fingers scrabbling at Corvus's arm. He could hardly breathe. "We cannot, unless—" Corvus released him with a snort, and the man crumpled to the floor, gasping. He felt death's shadow up close. The others rushed to help him to his feet. Their futures hung on this one man's knowledge. "Continue," Corvus said coolly. "If I'm not satisfied, none of you will live. With our current technology, we cannot expand a portal large enough for an army to pass through from this side," the Kree managed after he recovered. "Only by interacting with the source on the other side can the portal's scale increase. In other words, someone at the destination must harness the energy as well." They had learned through desperate trial and error just how extraordinary that power was. It made possible a portal spanning countless light years. But they had no way to amplify its aperture from their side alone. Corvus stared at him, making the man tremble. "You have 1 day to increase the portal's capacity to 3 people. Fail, and you'll share the fate of those who failed before you." With that, Corvus and Proxima walked out. The Kree exhaled in unison and immediately began urgent argument and planning. Outside the lab, Proxima asked, "What will you do now?" "My lord needs us to retrieve the Infinity Stone," Corvus said, his face unreadable. "He also ordered me to test the strength of a planet called Earth. Before we came, Thanos told me there was a trace of another Infinity Stone there." "Another?" Proxima sounded incredulous. "A single planet holding 2 Infinity Stones? That shouldn't be possible." "Yes, perhaps that's why he wants us to test it," Corvus said. "Once the portal is ready, we'll go through, retrieve the stone, and see what's so unusual about that world." On the bridge, Corvus opened a cabinet and took out a scepter set with a blue Infinity Stone. The scepter was compact now, but it could extend and retract at will, its surface catching the bridge light like a promise of power. Chapter 160, Unstable Cosmic Cube. After the meeting, Fury spoke with Noah for a while. then went back to talk with Talus. When Fury learned that Noah might have detected Talus's identity by some means, he planned to bring it up with Noah later. It felt like a busy day, and before he could get back to it, his phone rang. Agent Hill. What? The Tesseract's energy is fluctuating and becoming unstable. Fury's pupils tightened at Hill's first sentence. He knew the Tesseract's power well. If used properly, it could yield tremendous benefits, but if anything unexpected happened to it, the consequences could be catastrophic. Yes, sir. An hour ago, the Tesseract self-activated and began emitting unstable energy, Hill reported. Fury breathed in slowly, forcing his mind to work. Is Dr. Selvig there? Eric Selvig, the same physics professor famous for that ill-timed nude run in New Mexico, had been invited by S.H.I.E.L.D. after the Thor incident and taken by Coulson to a secret base to study the Tesseract. Dr. Selvig is working on it now, Hill said. Good. Let him try to stabilize it. I'll be there as soon as I can. After issuing a string of instructions, Fury ended the call and prepared to leave for the Tesseract's location. Talus, who had been listening, spoke up. He knew the Tesseract well. When the Skrulls first came to Earth, it had at one point been in their possession before it ended up in Fury's hands. Fury straightened his jacket. Talus, you're coming with me. The Skrulls' technology was far beyond human tech. If Selvig couldn't stop the anomaly, Talus might find a solution. Talus agreed. Fury wrapped up what remained to be done, told Steve and the others he had to handle an emergency, and then realized Noah was nowhere to be found. Fury had his men search the base, and when they still couldn't locate him, he sent a few terse messages to Noah explaining the urgency. Then Fury, Talus, and 3 operatives boarded a Quinjet and took off for the research base. What none of them knew was that Noah was already on the Quinjet. Noah lay flat on the roof of the aircraft, hands folded behind his head and legs crossed. The Project Armor's stealth mode was engaged, and the magnetic field at its back clung to the Quinjet's hull so he could ride without falling. Earlier, while Fury had been talking to Hill, Noah had been wandering the base. When he heard the word Tesseract over Fury's call, Lysandra, who had been monitoring the base, picked up the conversation. Noah, who had already noticed the Tesseract's energy becoming unstable, had suspected Thanos was responsible and quietly hitched a ride. He'd been curious since Loki's disappearance about what else might come out of the cube, and hadn't used his mission count for the day. This was a chance to see what high-level missions might appear. The base was in the American wilderness, built specifically for Tesseract research and the Phase 2 program. At Quinjet speed, the flight was short. Fury and his team disembarked quickly. Hill had been waiting at the entrance. The Tesseract's energy is still escalating, she said, leading them toward the containment area. Can't Dr. Selvig stop it? Fury asked. No. He says the cube is fluctuating on its own. He can't find the cause. They reached the elevator and Fury stopped Hill. Evacuate everyone. Now, the sooner the better. Sir, if we can't contain it, evacuation might not help, Hill protested. Then do the sensible thing. Get them away from the point of failure, Fury snapped, already pressing the elevator call, and transfer all Phase 2 prototypes and critical equipment off-site. Hill hesitated. Do we even have time? As long as Earth hasn't ended, we prepare, Fury replied. Those systems are necessities. Hill nodded and moved to implement the orders. When the elevator doors opened, Fury saw Dr. Eric Selvig bent over the containment array, sweating and clearly flustered. Selvig looked up at Fury's voice and hurried forward to explain. Outside the base, Noah hovered in midair. Magic hummed around him, radiating through the compound as he watched everything unfold.